Hey there, everybody. So next step after we got the drawing done, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to start to paint it, okay? And so I've got a basic watercolor set here, easy. I've got kind of a wider brush for what we're going to do today, and then you need some water and a paper towel, all right? And first step, I'm going to take my water, right? And all I'm going to do is get my brush wet. What I'm going to do is just kind of, you don't have to drown it, but I'm going to brush water across the paper. Just enough to where the surface gets damp, because what you want to do most of the time with watercolors, you do want to condition the paper. It has a tendency, because of the real watery nature of what you're doing, to buckle, okay? And so that's just kind of get the paper ready. When you're doing a fancy watercolor painting, you'll tape it down to a board and then wet it. That way it stays flat as the water hits it. But for this, we're okay like this. So just put a little bit of water on there. It'll get the surface damp, okay? And then what you're going to do is get your brush, and with your yellow paint, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a completely yellow coloring of this entire image. Fruit, background, foreground, everything. Okay? Doesn't have to be perfect. All we're doing is putting some colorization in there. And so the reason why I do this is when you have an image or when you're painting something, a lot of times it has a what I'd call like a primary color influence in it. Okay? And if you look at the image on your Canvas assignment, the reference image, you know, the apple's green, but it's like a real lime green, which is a green that's made with more yellow than blue. And then if you look at the pear is orange underneath, or yellow underneath everything, but this kind of got a red-orange like pattern or texture on top of it, okay? And so for me, the entire painting has a yellow influence. So that's the color that I would start out with on this painting particularly, okay? And so once you get your base coloring down in there, what you'll want to do on the next pass, we're going to paint inside the fruit, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and dig out a lot more paint so that it's less water, so that the yellow gets more intense. It's almost like we're doing a value, right? We're going to start to put in where the darks or lights are. Now when you do this, you're going to cover your pieces of fruit with this next pass, but wherever we have those highlight areas that we drew on there, right, that little shape over on the pear, this guy, this guy, this guy, anywhere if you highlight areas, don't put any more paint on there, okay? So just leave those where they were after you finished your first pass of yellow, okay? But everywhere else, even like in the stem up here, because it's darker, right? So we're going to increase the value on this, the color intensity. If you got the shadows underneath the pear, right, the stem on the pear, that's going to have that more intense yellow. But leave those highlight areas where they were. All right, and so just come in here and lay in that next. Now, if you're trying to put the yellow in and the color's not laying down, it's kind of mixing back into it, just take your paper towel and kind of dab across the surface, because what's happening is the surface is still too wet to apply that second layer of color. With watercolors, it's really about layering and building. And so what usually happens is when you're working, you're going to let a layer dry and then come back and lay your next version on top. Now, this right here, what you're seeing on the video is a lot lighter, but it's actually just like this here, okay? And so let me see if I can turn that to show you. It's just kind of strange when the light's hitting it, but this whole thing is darker than it was the first layer, okay? And like I said, if you're not, like right in here, it's not really letting me put any orange in there or yellow in there to intensify it. So I'm going to keep just digging in my paint, my yellow paint, to see if I get more of that paint on there and less of the water. That might be a case where I need to dab the surface because it's just too much water. It's making it dissipate, right? Okay. And once you get that, I mean, you can see on the video here, that's pretty good. You can see how the fruit's gotten darker, right? And like I said, they're more consistent. But as long as it looks richer than that out here, that's perfect, okay? And so we're going to continue to paint the fruit, but we got to let this dry in this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my brush out, all right? And then we're going to split this into like two pieces, so a top piece and a bottom piece. So the back piece will be like a background, and this front area here will be like it's on a table or something, okay? So what I'm going to do is we're going to use red, okay? And so I'm going to get my brush real wet, and I'm going to put some red, and then right about, you know what, right about here, I'm just going to come through here, and I'm going to make a horizon line, all right? And then in the background, I'm going to come around and I'm going to paint that color into the background. Now, when you start to do this, keep your borders intact. You know, the first layer was pretty loose, but as you paint this, try and keep the borders of your objects in good shape, all right? Now, if you get a lot of like variation and speckling and textures and brush directions, now see how that's kind of smudging right there? That's because it has a lot of water, so just watch that, all right? I'm going to go ahead and pull some color up this way so I can make that to where it's not so fuzzy. All right, same thing over here. Just when that watercolor hits the water, it has a tendency to like run away. Right? But I'm just trying to get I want to get some color in the background. But like I said, as you paint this, go ahead and, you know, be real careful not to mess up the borders of your objects. And I mean, all this that we're doing here is underpainting. With watercolor, you have to layer. So once you start to go to get your darker values, more like what they really are, that's where you've got to let the paint dry and then come back and paint over it again. The other cool thing about watercolors is you can see I'm painting that red, but the yellow is definitely coming through it. And so this is kind of the similar idea I talked about when we shaded the minion and the cylinder and the cone and the sphere. I like the color interaction of things because it just gives it more energy, right? So if you got that yellow coming through the red, it's just more vibrant. You know, if I just painted it flat red, you know, it'd be nice, but, you know, watercolor, it's translucent, and so you want to take advantage of those things it does naturally. And so letting the colors come through each other, it's a good thing. All right? Just make sure, keep your edges clean. All right. And so that's it for this video. That's step one. We've established some values and some color intensities, and we've gotten some color interaction going. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and let my paint dry, and then we'll continue to paint on this next video. So that was pretty simple. Like I said, don't get too crazy about if the paint's all kind of, you know, irregular and messy. You want it to be loose because watercolor, that's a nice quality watercolor. But do keep your boundaries nice and tight wherever you're painting there, okay? And we'll see you next video. Thanks.